making emotional decisions in our business. And the way that we can overcome emotional decision making is by making sure that we are using data-based, logical decision making. But if we don't know the numbers and we don't understand the numbers and what the numbers point to, then it makes it really hard to make logical decisions in our business. And I'm going to tell you guys this from a perspective of someone that used to be afraid of numbers and used to hate numbers. Once you learn it, it's almost like someone opened up the curtain and you can see behind the scenes now. You have much more clarity on what to look at and what your numbers mean. So this is gonna be our focus today, and I want this to be interactive today, guys. So I'm gonna ask you some questions. Feel free to unmute yourself and answer and play along. Feel free to participate in the chat. We have some team members that can relay information to me through the chat as well. But the very first thing I want to talk about when we're thinking about metrics that matter, let me get your guys' feedback. What are some of the metrics you feel like are the most important things to pay attention to in your martial arts school? And you guys can unmute. You guys can show them in the
attrition.
Chat. Attrition, awesome. Super important. What else?
New enrollments.
Enrollment's good. See student value. That's great. Anything else? I believe in you guys. Drink that coffee. Speak up. You can do it. Net student gain loss per month. Love that, Smitesh. Smitesh, good to see you. Okay, good. So all good answers so far. So what I want to break down first is the metrics that don't matter as much as people make it seem in our industry, okay? So the first metric that really doesn't matter as much as you think is number of students. Here's why. There's school owners that will brag that they have 500 students, but then when you look at their revenue, they're grossing $50,000. So what does that tell me? That means that they have an average student value of $100 per member. I would rather have a school with 200 students with $50,000 in gross. Would you guys agree with that? You can give more one-on-one attention, more personal attention to a smaller group of students, but still have the same gross. And we're going to talk about how we can make that happen. Okay, but student count is what I call a vanity metric. Okay, usually the only people that brag about student count are the people that are saying that number because they want to try and impress you. All right, at the end of the day, it's not that important. All right. The other one that gets thrown around a lot, which is important in some senses, but not the most important, is your gross revenue. So your total revenue per month. Is it important? It can be, but what's more important is how much are you netting? How much are you actually keeping from that gross revenue? Because I might be able to tell you that I'm making $100,000 a month in the business, but if my profit on that's $1,000, is that really impressive? Does gross revenue really mean that much? No. I've also seen schools that are doing $18,000 a month, but their expenses and their overhead is so low that they're profiting $12,000 out of that $18,000. I would rather have that $12,000 profit out of an $18,000 gross than $100,000 gross and $1,000 profit. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So now that we sort of know the vanity metrics, I want to just sort of jump into what I feel like are some of the most important metrics that you need to be paying attention to. First one that we're going to talk about is called net billing. Okay, so net billing is the total billing lost or gained in a month. Okay, why is this important? So this is what I call a growth metric, right? This lets you know the trajectory of growth for your martial arts school. So basically what we're doing is, let's say, just to make math easy, let's say you charge $200 a month at your school. Okay, let's say we have 5 people cancel. And then we have, let's say we have 10 people that enroll. Okay, the way we calculate net billing is we're just going to take that monthly payment. So if I had 5 people at $200, that's going to be a loss of $1,000. We have 5 people paying $200 that canceled. So we just lost $1,000 in monthly billing. Okay, and then we also had 10 people enroll in that same month, which is going to be a gain of billing of 2,000. Okay, so how do we figure out net billing? We're just taking the difference between billing gained and billing lost, which means this number can be a positive or negative number, right? So in this case, our net billing would equal plus $1,000. Everyone staying with me so far? I know math in the morning is hard. It is for me too. It's all right. So if I'm going too fast at all, or if you guys need more clarity on something, please speak up, unmute yourself and ask, or throw it in the chat, and I'll slow down a little bit. Okay, so what would this look like if it was reversed though? So let's say we have 10 cancellations, 5 enrollments. Okay, which means if this was a scenario, we're losing $2,000 in billing, only gaining 1,000. Okay, because we only enrolled 5, lost 10. Okay, which means in this scenario, we'd be at a negative $1,000 of net billing. What I encourage you guys to do is if you guys are doing like a staff bonus structure, okay, more important than basing it on revenue, base it on what the net billing is, because this factors in enrollments, but it also factors in retention or attrition as well. Because besides signing up new members, they also have to keep members in order for this to maintain a positive number. So a lot of us, and I've made this mistake too, and we just recently switched to this model, is where I was doing bonuses based on overall revenue. Okay. And which can be misleading, because if you have a high pro shop month, if you have a holiday sale month, your gross revenue is going to be higher than normal, and it's nothing reflective of billing or you actually growing the recurring revenue. So when you base your bonus structure on net billing, now it's based on retention and new business at the same time. So it factors in more important metrics than just revenue. So for our school, we usually set a net billing goal of plus 1,500. Now, here's the cool thing. This can come from great attrition. It can come from new members. It can come from upgrades. Because if I get 5 upgrades at $100 a month this month, that's still plus $500 in billing, and it still gets equated in this net billing. So now we bonus based on, are we hitting the 1,500, and we do a tiered bonus structure. Okay, so if this is the minimum goal, then maybe at 2,000 we give them an extra couple $100. At 2,500 they get maybe $1,000 bonus for the month. Because if we think about net billing, let's say we added $2,500 in new billing for this month. Well, what does that mean really? Well, for us, we know that the average student stays at our school for 13 months. So if I do 13 times 2,500, that's really the total amount of new billing that we've accumulated over a lifetime for those members, which means when I bonus, I'm fine paying more than $2,500 or $1,500 in bonus, knowing that that's going to be multiplied over 13 months in most cases. Does that make sense to everyone? Yes? Okay. All right. So any other questions on net billing before we move on to the next metric? Does everyone feel confident with how to calculate this? I know if you have Spark, it'll calculate it for you. I always just double check though the math to make sure it's doing it accurately, because there can be some inconsistencies. But if you're not tracking this now, this needs to be like the #1 metric you track. It's more important than really anything else we're covering today. Okay, next, we're going to talk about the one metric that never gets talked about in our industry. But if you look in any other industry, it is the probably top metric, and that's going to be net profit. Net profit, really simple, is how much money do you keep at the end of the month? Okay, revenue is awesome, but if there's no money left over, it doesn't really do much. So net profit is going to be revenue minus expenses. So expenses is going to be everything, payroll, it's going to be inventory we purchase, it's going to be rent, insurance, all of that stuff. You'll also hear this referred to as cash flow. So like in the franchise world, they talk about the goal is to have $10,000 a month in cash flow for it to be considered a successful franchise, which what they're saying is $10,000 a month in profit is the goal for them to have a successful franchise.
Cup of water?
So for us, when we're thinking about net profit, why this is so important, well, number one, I can build reserves faster if I'm profiting more. Okay, so what I always recommend is, especially if you're a newer school, you want to build up 3 to 6 months of reserves from your profit. Okay, so meaning you can still be paying yourself and just taking the extra profit, that's fine. But whatever profit is left over, I should be putting in a separate account. I put ours in a separate account at a separate bank because I don't even want to see it. I don't want to be tempted to ever spend it. So I have a separate reserve account at a different bank. My normal bank is Chase. I use Blue Vine for a reserve account, but in that account is 6 months of expenses. So if another COVID happens, if we go into a deep recession, if my martial arts school is heavily reliant on the workers of the Amazon factory next to me and Amazon goes under or something, I want to make sure that I can still pay my people, pay my expenses, all of those things for a long enough time to be able to recover. And what happened was during COVID is a lot of martial arts schools went under because they didn't even have a month of reserves, let alone 3 to 6 months. So we want to make sure that we're building those reserves. And then typically what I recommend doing is after you hit that 6 months of reserves, there's really 2 different options, okay? So one, I invest whatever profits after we built this up, okay? Whether we're investing in real estate, whether we're investing in a portfolio, whatever it is, or I start a separate account where I start building up reserves to open the next location. So that way the cash flow from our current location is there to be able to use to open up a second location. Okay, but it requires discipline first, right? We got to build the reserves first. After we build those reserves, then we think about, well, what do we want to invest into? And it could be maybe you just want to invest into your employees more and you want to pay them more, or you want to invest into a benefit program for them. Okay, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can use that money to make it a better experience for your employees or even your students. Maybe after I get 6 months reserves, I'm going to start a fund to renovate the martial arts school and make it look higher end or make it look better. Okay, and maybe that's where that's going to go. But always start with this first. You always want to make sure you have that safety net. Okay, and tracking your net profit is going to help. The other thing I'd recommend doing is making sure that if you're not doing it already, that you guys are creating profit and loss reports. Every business should have this because it tells you your net profit. It breaks down your expenses if you look at a detailed P&L. How do you get this? Number one is if you don't have an accountant doing your bookkeeping, you can purchase QuickBooks for like $27 a month. Okay, and as long as you're categorizing your expenses, in the report section, you can create a profit and loss report with a click of a button. Okay, and it's going to show you what went in, what went out, and what actual items or categories that your expenses went out to. If you have an accountant, they should be doing this for you if you're paying them for bookkeeping. Okay, so they should be doing this for you and then sending it to you by the 15th of the following month so that you can have a detailed review of your business. And the crazy thing is, our industry is probably one of the only ones that doesn't really focus on this too much, which is a big mistake in my opinion. Okay, because this is where I check to see if there's been double charges, like we've been double charged for services we're paying for. This is where I look to make sure that everything in Spark or whatever CRM you're using matches up with what's actually going in and out of the accounts. Okay, so this is a really important thing to pay attention to. If you guys are feeling completely lost on this, just type P&L in the chat And if we get enough responses, I will do an entire hour for you guys on how to create the perfect P&L report for a martial arts school. Okay, it'll just give you guys more insight into those numbers as well. All right, let's move on. And again, if you guys have any questions or need me to slow down on anything, please speak up and I will answer any questions. I'm seeing a lot of P&L, so it looks like we may be doing that for our next webinar. All right, cool. All right, so we covered net billing, net profit. All right, next two we're going to go over, we call this arm and leg, which there's different names for both of these, but we'll go over all of this. Let me get a marker that maybe works a little bit better here. Okay, that's better. Okay, so ARM is average revenue per member. Okay, so what does this mean? And how do you figure it out? So if you guys take your gross revenue, so your total revenue, okay, and you divide it by your number of students, this is going to equal your average revenue per member. Okay, now why is this important to understand? We talked about earlier that number of students is really just a vanity metric. So when I hear someone say, oh, I have 400 students, that means nothing to me because they could be charging $20 a student and not be making any money. Where average revenue per member tells a lot more about the health of the business. So for example, if I have, we'll use the same scenario we used earlier. If I have 500 students and I'm grossing $50,000 a month, okay, 50,000 divided by 500 students would equal an average revenue per member of $100. Not very good, okay? If I have 50,000 gross still, but I have 200 students, all of a sudden my average revenue per member jumps through the roof. All right, and we'll go over some different ways to raise this. So let's do this just as an example. Okay, so let's say my revenue is $60,000. And I recommend whatever you're putting in for revenue should be an average over 90 days, because we can have one great month because we had a pay in full or because we had a big sale or something that can skew what our gross revenue is. So I always like looking at a 90-day snapshot. So I'll take the last 3 months, see what our average revenue is over those last 3 months. And that's the number I'm going to use for this. And then I do the same thing with student count. I'm going to take our average student count over the last 3 months and use that as the number for active students. Okay, so let's say $60,000 average per month. And then let's just say our student count is 300. So average student count is 300 over the last 3 months. Okay, and that would give me an average revenue per member of $200. So what I encourage you guys to do is figure out what your average revenue per member is, and then set some goals of what you want to do to grow. So what I mean by that is I would say tier 1 for goals for this is $175 average revenue per member. Tier 2 I'd put at 200. And then 3 and 4 will go up by $50 each. So 250 and then 300. And those should be your goals that you're shooting to hit for average revenue per member. Now, the thing that we want to remember is when we're thinking about average revenue per member, how do you raise that number? How do you get that number higher? So if let's say I'm charging $150 per month. Okay, and we're going to make this interactive real quick. If I'm charging $150 per month, what are some actions I can take in my school to raise this number up higher?
Raise the tuition for the next student in the door.
Yeah, so, okay, I'm going to raise tuition for new members, all right? Now I saw someone put new members. New members isn't actually going to raise my average revenue per member. It might raise my revenue, but if I'm still enrolling them at the same rate, my average revenue per member will stay the same. But definitely raising tuition for new members will help to incrementally grow that.
Upgrades.
Events, private lessons, pro shop. Yeah, so anything I call it over the counter. Okay, over the counter sales will add to this. I saw someone say upgrades. Upgrades will definitely move the metric on this. One of our coaches in the mastermind, Jonathan Frank, he's got 5 locations in Maryland. He has an upgrade program in a school that's $625 a month, which means most of his locations are well over $300 for average revenue per member. But the value matches what he's charging for that. Okay. Add value upgrades. Yes, increase current member rates. Now I'm going to put a little asterisk next to increase current member rates. Here's why. And we'll get to attrition and retention numbers in just a second. If I have bad retention numbers, what's going to happen when I increase my current rates? It's going to be worse retention numbers. Okay, because if I have bad retention numbers, it means that the people currently training aren't seeing the value, or they're not feeling connected to my team in the studio. So if I just start to raise rates on people that aren't satisfied with the product already, they're just going to jump ship and leave. Now, a lot of you guys have great retention numbers, but for some reason, you're just afraid to pull the trigger on this because you're overthinking it. All right. I was an overthinker when we recently raised our rates for all of our students. Okay. We did it in January. We did a 10% increase across the board for all of our students. Okay. How many complaints do you think we got? 0. No. And the fact is, no one even brought it up or mentioned it. Not alone like complain. Like they didn't even act like, after I sent it out, I was like, damn, we should have raised by 20% because no one batted an eye at 10%. Okay. But here's what happened though, when we did this, right? So at the time, I'm just gonna use the same model, right? So $60,000, let's just say this is our billing, okay? And we're pretty close to 300 students. I think this was probably slightly higher at the time. Okay, but let's say 60,000 is my billing. If I raise all of the rates by 10%, I just increased billing by $6,000 for the same number of students. Okay, so now, let's say 66,000 divided by 300. My math isn't that good this morning, but we'll figure this out. Okay, so now my average revenue per member went from 200 to 220 instantly. And you guys know how much work this took? 2 emails. That's it. We sent out 2 emails and we instantly increased our ARM by $20 per member without having to do anything else. Okay, but if our retention was not good, this wouldn't have worked. Okay, we would have had cancellations. Now, the other thing to weigh in on this is when you guys are increasing current rates, okay, I always factor in like, what if 10 people quit? Or what if 15 people quit? So if we had 10 people quit at $200 each, we would lose $2,000 in billing, right? But here's the thing, with the rest of the students getting raised by 10%, that's plus 6,000 in billing. So when we look at the difference between losing 2,000 and gaining 6,000, we're still plus 4,000 in billing. So even if 10 people quit, we would still be ahead in billing. And if 10 people quit, it still means we'd be able to service the rest of the students even better because we have 10 less students to focus on. Hopefully this is all making sense to everyone. Yes? Okay, any questions so far? Just on what we've covered. We're gonna go into attrition and retention, or sorry, we'll go leg and then attrition and retention. Okay, cool. Everyone's staying with me so far. All right, let's go to leg next. I'm gonna erase this. We will send out a recording of this afterwards too. So if you're like, oh crap, I missed notes on that part, don't worry about it. You guys can always rewatch the recording afterwards. All right, so we said arm is average revenue per member. Leg, so we call length of engagement. I also refer to this as stick rate a lot. It's the same thing. Okay, we measure length of engagement in months. And really what this is the number of months the average student trains. Okay, so number of months an average student trains. So I track this two ways. If you guys are a Spark user, in Spark, it will give you this in ultimate stats. Okay, it'll give you how many months they train. But the one thing you need to keep in mind is that, as far as I know, and Ron can probably correct me on this, in Spark, it's giving you this over the lifetime of you using Spark. So if I've been using Spark for 4 years, it's given me the length of engagement based on the last 4 years, which is good to know, but it doesn't show me recently what my length of engagement is. Does that make sense to everyone? So I could have had great retention the first 2 years I was open, and then terrible retention. But when I look at it just from a lifetime, I don't see terrible retention. I see average retention. But maybe if I look at the last year or two, it's terrible retention. So we want to make sure that we are at least doing this over a 24-month period that we're tracking this. So that way we can see. Because the school owners I talk to that don't know this say this. They go, well, once they start, they stay forever. We know that's not true. Okay. To me, that means I don't know how long people stay, but I'm pretty sure they stay around a while. Okay, that's because this isn't being tracked. Okay, and the cool thing is, we started out when before Spark tracked this, we just had a spreadsheet. Okay, and in the spreadsheet, we'd have the person's name, start date, end date, and then number of months trained. Okay, and then we could average out the column with the number of months trained to figure out what the length of engagement was and how long the average members stay. And you can also track this based on program. So we track this based on our Little Champions program, which is our like 5 to 7 year old class. We also track it on the 8 to 12, because when you don't track it by program, you don't know which program is broken when this number starts to get low. Now here's average of our industry is 7 months. Okay, the fitness industry is about 3.5 months. Okay, your goal should be at least 12 months or more. Now, if I have, let's just say I figure out how long the average student is staying with me, what do I do with that information? Well, let's just, for example, let's say your length of engagement is 9 months. We're going to get interactive again. Okay, so let's say my length of engagement is 9 months, and let's say my testing cycles are 3-month testing cycles. What does that tell me? If I have a leg of 9 months and I have 3-month testing cycles, what does that information give me?
They're only making it through basic.
They're only making it through basic, and that's important. Why?
You're losing, it depends on how your curriculum's set up, but you're probably losing them when they start sparring, or, I mean, it could be a number of different reasons.
Yeah, you're on the right track. Perfect. So this tells me that there's something happening in probably months 6, 7, and 8 that's causing them to drop off by month 9. Or there's a lack of something happening in 6, 7, and 8 that's causing them to drop off at month 9. So it could be a number of things. Okay, number one, I always look at the curriculum first, because maybe during these months leading up to month 9, there's a curriculum change happening. So it could be maybe sparring, and for whatever reason, they're afraid to spar, so they drop out. Or maybe it's because I'm making them buy all their sparring gear in month 6, and parents don't like that expense all at once, so they'd rather just stop training altogether. right? So one of the ways we combat that is we started using sparring like gloves immediately when they join. So that way the parents get the gloves when they join. Okay. And then we drip out the rest of the gear and start integrating it step by step. So they're not buying one giant chunk of gear all at once. Okay. And now it's more spread out over their time of training. Okay. The other thing I might look at is what is my communication like leading up to month 9? How often am I checking in with those students? How often am I doing things to show them that we appreciate them during month 6, 7, and 8? Maybe what I'm going to do is, if we think about this, I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here. Average student goes 2 times per week, right? In a month with an average of 4.3 weeks, let's just round up and say they go 9 times a month on average. Okay. If we take 9 times 9, that's going to be 81. So I know that they have 81 classes, most likely within 9 months. So maybe to get them to stick around longer, I'm going to start awarding something when they hit 100 classes. So now they have something to look forward to keep going with their training because they get some sort of recognition when they hit 100 classes. Okay. For us, we were stuck at about like month 10 for a while. So we started adding every time they move up to a class, we award them a trophy at graduation. And it's something simple and easy to do, but it's something that every kid looks forward to. And for most of the kids, the first trophy they've ever earned was for putting years of work in for martial arts. Okay, and then maybe I'm looking at whatever class is coming after 9 months, and I'm looking to see, well, what can I do with the curriculum to make it more exciting, to make kids really look forward to want to move up to that class. It could be as simple as maybe my instructors just never future pace the students. So maybe they're never talking about like, man, when you get to intermediate class, we're going to take this and we're going to do this, this, and this with it. And you guys will be able to raise that to the next level. And maybe it's working on future pacing with my instructors. So it'll be a combination of things, but this metric is going to tell you where you're losing people. So you can do something in the 2 to 3 months before it to help counteract that. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. Okay, then here's the cool thing. Arm and leg, we use to determine lifetime value. Okay, so lifetime value is the average spend or the average revenue over the lifetime of a member. When it comes to marketing, this is the metric, if you know it, that gives you confidence in spending money on marketing. Okay, so here's what I mean by that. All right, so to figure this out first, we're going to take our arm times leg equals lifetime value. Okay, so if I have an arm of $200, I feel like I have to get like lower into the splits every time to write down here. Okay, if I have an arm of $200 and let's just say I have a 12-month leg, just to make the math easy. Okay, 200 times 12 equals 2,400. So I would know that my lifetime value of a member is $2,400. Now, what does that tell me? That tells me when I enroll a student, in most cases, I can expect to get $2,400 from that student over the lifetime of their membership. Now, why is this metric so important? How many of you guys are hesitant when it comes to putting money into marketing? Anyone? How many? Okay, let's reframe this. Who here is spending $2,000 a month in marketing? Like just an ad spend?
I am.
We got one. All right. I spend on average $2,500 a month on marketing. Do you know the average school in my area spends on marketing? Less than $500 a month. Do you know why I spend $2,500 and they only spend $500? It's because of this number. They don't know what their return is when they get a new student. So they don't know how much they should be willing to spend to acquire a new student. I know that we're going to get at least $2,400 from every new student that joins. So I want you guys to picture this. You go to Vegas and there's a slot machine. It's a magic slot machine. No matter what money you put in, you get $2,400 out. every time you pull the lever. Would I put $100 in that slot machine and pull that lever all day? Keep putting in $100 if I know I'm getting 2,400 back? Would you guys do that? Yes, no? Yeah, you get a 24 time return on what you're putting in the slot machine is guaranteed every time. I guarantee you're putting $100 in every time because that money just keeps coming in, right? That's what you need to think about when it comes to marketing, right? If I know that I'm going to get $2,400 back, am I willing to spend $100 to acquire a student? Yes, all day, every day. Am I willing to spend $200 to acquire a student? I'd rather spend $100, but yes, I would spend $200 if I know I'm getting $2,400 back. In marketing, there's a saying that says, whoever is willing to spend the most to acquire a customer wins. So if you're willing to spend more to acquire a student than your competition, you are going to win every time because you're not afraid to put more money into ad spend. Your competition that doesn't know what return, they're playing like the normal slot machine in Vegas, where you're putting the dollar in and you're just like hoping you win something because they don't know what the return on their investment is. This gives you guys a significant competitive advantage. I'm always willing to spend more on marketing because I always know that that return is coming on the back end. So when we know that, it helps. So we have ARM, average revenue per member, length of engagement, which is the number of months the average student stays. And then we have lifetime value, which is going to be how much do we actually collect on average from each student. Now, let's take this LTV and show you how this works with your marketing, so you guys can figure out what your cost per acquisition is, okay? All right. So I recommend doing this with 90 days of data, doing paid advertising. Okay, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to take our ad spend. Okay, so however much money I put into Facebook, Google, TikTok, wherever I'm putting money into, we're going to divide our ad spend by number of new members. Again, I recommend doing this over a 90-day snapshot. Here's why. If you're doing probably November, December, January, you're going to have a dip in December. You're going to have a giant gain in January. They'll offset each other. But if I'm only looking at my December numbers, this is going to be very skewed because we know December is the highest lead cost month per year. Okay, so let's say I'm doing $2,000 in ad spend. And let's say I'm averaging 20 new members. This is going to give me $100. We call this CPA, cost per acquisition, okay, which is essentially how much it costs you to buy a new member with your ad spend. Now, we already talked about lifetime value. If this is my real cost per acquisition, $100, and my lifetime value is $2,400, I know that for every $100 I put in, I get $2,400 out. I become super confident when it comes to spending money in marketing. Okay, ours at MX hovers around like usually between $100 and $115 cost per acquisition. But we also spend $2,000, $2,500 a month on getting new members because we can be confident that we put this in and we get that out. Now, if my lifetime value is low because either I'm not charging enough or I don't have good retention, then I might not be as confident spending that. Okay, but I'd be looking at how to get this higher so I can be more confident spending more money. Because again, if you're willing to spend more to get a student than your competition, okay, you're going to win every time, especially if you're running social media ads, which are structured as an auction format. They reward the people that spend the most amount of money to acquire a new member or to acquire a new lead. Okay, so it helps you guys to win. Is this cost per acquisition and how it works to lifetime value making sense to everyone? Yes, staying with me so far? Okay, cool. All right, let's go next to attrition. So we have two numbers when it comes to tracking how students stay. The one that's been around forever in our industry is retention. The one that I prefer to track, and it's just my personal opinion, is attrition. So what are the difference? Okay, if I have 100 students and 5 quit, my retention is 95%. So this is referring to the number of students that stay with you. If I have the same scenario, I have 100 students and 5 cancel, my attrition is going to be 5%. Okay, so attrition is tracking the percentage of students lost each month, where retention is tracking the number of students kept each month. The reason I like tracking attrition better is because for me, I feel like it's a more honest metric. 95, we're taught all through education that this is an A, this is good. Okay. This, when I'm losing 5% of my student base, that means a little bit more and it hurts a little bit more. So that's why I track this number. Okay. Your attrition goal, or what we teach in our mastermind as what your goal should be, is 4%. Okay, so my goal is to lose no more than 4% of my current student base every month. Okay, if you're running at 4% attrition, okay, and your marketing is consistent, you are going to see ARM to continue to grow. You're going to see your revenue continue to grow. Billing's going to continue to grow. That net billing is going to be moving up pretty easily, as long as I have consistent marketing going with this. Now, we figured out from studying about 1,000 martial arts schools that the average attrition for our industry hovers around 8 to 9%. Okay, which if you're losing almost 10% of your student base every month, that's a large chunk that you have to replace, which means getting past that 10% to actually grow becomes really, really difficult. Yes, I can keep buying more members, but if they're just going out the back door, I'm pretty much just trading every single month instead of growing. So since we're on this, how do we improve attrition? I'm going to erase this real quick. Hopefully everyone has what the attrition goal should be of 4%. Okay, I'm going to give you guys like a few really quick things without going into too much detail just because of time. Okay, so first thing for attrition or retention, do you have a 90-day onboarding set up? Okay, which means when a new member joins, is there strategic and specific, okay, outreach, connection, education, and engagement happening in the first 90 days they're enrolled? What tends to happen with a lot of martial arts schools is they do pretty good with lead follow-up, where they're communicating with leads pretty consistently and effectively, and then that person enrolls and gives you their credit card, and then all the communication falls off once they give you their credit card. So that person feels like as soon as they gave you their money, you forgot about them. When you have the 90-day onboarding set up, this will create consistent communication and engagement with those people after they pay you, so they still feel valued after they've given you their money. Next thing, this has been around in our industry for years, missing in action calls. Back in the day, I think they used to call them like 246 calls for onboarding, but missing in action calls. When someone doesn't show up for class, do you call them? So we use the Spark class reservation system. And if someone is registered for class and they're not there when class starts, we are calling them to check in on them to make sure they're okay. And then we'll manually reschedule their next class over the phone. The other thing that we do is every Wednesday, we call anyone that has not been in for class that week to try and just get them in for class that week. Okay, because if you wait to the end of the week to do your missing in action calls, they've already written off that week because they most likely aren't going to come in for Saturday to train. And then 1 week turns into 2 weeks, turns into 3 weeks, and then we lose them, right? Having this system. The next one is quarterly courtesy calls. So every quarter, we call every single student. Adam, that sounds like a giant pain in the ass. It is. It is a giant pain in the ass, but it's worth it, okay? So we go through our entire student list and we mark them as red, yellow, or green, okay? Red is they could cancel tomorrow and we wouldn't be surprised. Yellow is we don't know if they're a raving fan or if they're on the verge of canceling. They're just sort of in the middle temperature-wise. And then green is like if we ask them to tattoo our logo on their forehead, they would do it tomorrow. Okay, and then what we do is we call all the reds first. Then we offer them a private lesson, just a free 15-minute private lesson. Okay, just to help get them re-engaged and give them some more attention. Then we call the yellows to do more of just a progress check with them. And then lastly, we call the greens and do a progress check with them. When you have newer staff members, I always have them calling the greens. Okay, and they just say, hey, this is my first time doing courtesy calls. And then they go through the script. And usually the greens are raving fans already. So if that person messes up the call, they don't care. They're just glad for the attention. Okay, and then our head coach calls all the reds. Okay, because we want to give them more attention because we think they could cancel at any moment. All right, moving on. We call these momentum challenges. Okay, in the martial arts industry, we're all aware that we have different transitional periods throughout the year, yes? And transitional periods are periods where we tend to lose more students. Okay, so if we think about it, beginning of the year, going into the summer, coming out of the summer, and then holidays, okay? 4 big transition periods. So what tends to happen is if your students start to miss classes or start to feel disengaged before those transition periods, where do they go? They cancel. So momentum challenges are specific contests that we put together at our school to get them to buy in further before those transition periods. So like in the summer, we do a summer attendance challenge, okay, to reward them for coming to class. And we have a special reward for perfect attendance. Going into the summer, we do this thing called a bingo battle, okay, which is getting them to do things that show mom and dad the character development traits they're learning at karate. It's rewarding them for practicing at home, and it's rewarding them for giving us reviews and things like that. But all of those challenges are meant to get them to buy in more. So when mom starts to look at the schedule to reevaluate, martial arts isn't even an option. Here's the cool thing. The first time we did our show up showdown challenge in the summer, I had kids complaining that they had to go on vacation because they didn't want to miss out on winning the prizes for the attendance challenge. Like, the ultimate martial arts goal is for a kid to pick martial arts over vacation, isn't it? Like that shows that you're doing something right. Okay. These challenges are great incentives to put in place at your school to get people to stay training longer. Okay, the other thing we already talked about was milestone awards. This could be number of classes attended. It could be a year of training, 2 years of training, 3 years of training. But just having these little milestones that are something besides belts for them to be incentivized to keep training, to keep moving forward. We have a bunch more stuff, but as far as time goes, I wanted to give you sort of like our top 5 right there. Gage, what does your script look like for the courtesy call? That'll probably be good for another call. But I want to, we can put that on the list for calls. We'll do a poll in the group afterwards just to see what you guys want me to teach next, because I know we had a lot of people requesting P&L as well. Those are the main metrics that we focus on. And then I want to show you guys next how we track all of this. So I'm actually going to push this back and jump on the computer and screen share with you guys. Let me just pull my chair over real quick. My chair disappeared. Hold on. Okay. Thanks for your patience. All right. So first thing I want to talk to you guys about, let me throw a little bit here. There we go. Okay. Felt like a dwarf for a second. Okay. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to screen share with you guys. All right. One of the things that we do at our school and something that we teach in all of our programs that we work with school owners on is we use a program called Slack for inner office communication. Okay. So we use it for communicating with employees. We use it for staff schedules. We use it for a place for them to upload pictures so we can post them on social, all that stuff. Slack is a great way to organize all of your communication internally. And the cool thing is you can create different channels in Slack that only certain people on your team can view. So for example, we have a manager channel where the manager posts her end of shift debrief at the end of every day. Okay, that keeps me updated on what's going on in the school. We have an end of day stats channel where our manager or our admin will post all the stats from that day So that way, every single day I see a snapshot of where we are for the month. One of the biggest challenges I see with school owners is they don't look at stats until the end of the month. And in my opinion, that's too late. Because what can you do to save the month if you're only looking at them at the end of the month? You got to look at them daily. So that way you can spot downward trends before they're fully downward and you can course correct. So this end of day stats is the exact one that we use for our school. So our manager will fill this out every single day and drop it in our Slack channel for end of day stats. So there's two categories on here. First one is billing and revenue. Second is trials and memberships. So daily billing, they're going to put how much billing did we have come in that day. If you do camps or after schools, you can separate that for revenue. We don't do either. Then you have daily pro shop sales, daily gross revenue. So what was the total combined revenue from everything over the counter and everything billing? Okay, and then where are we at for the month now on all of those things? So where are pro shop sales at for the month? Where is our monthly billing for the month? If you do camps or after school, you can track that for the month as well. And then our monthly gross revenue, where are we at so far? By doing this, it lets you see, are you on track for your goals for the end of the month? It lets your team know, are we on track for the goals for the end of the month? Okay, and then we have plus minus billing, which is our net billing tracking here. Okay, so for the month, are we net positive or are we net negative for our billing? Trials and memberships. I will share this document in the chat also, guys, so that if you want to copy it, you can go for it. Trials and memberships, how many leads did we get today? Or sorry, web leads collected for the month, and then how many leads did we get for today? We know just based on conversion from like lead to trial conversion, trial to enrollment, we know exactly how many leads we need to get the number of new members that we need. Okay, so we have a lead goal that we have to hit. Now, as the owner of the school, it is my responsibility to make sure I'm getting our team enough leads for the month for them to hit the rest of their goals. It is my manager's responsibility to make sure she's taking those leads and converting them to trials at the right percentage and converting them to members at the right percentage. If we continue on, number of scheduled appointments. So how many appointments did we schedule today for first lessons? How many trials did we sell today? And then what's our monthly trial total? Okay, at our school, the goal is 50 trials to get 25 new members. If we have a 30 member goal, then it's 60 trials. No, I'm sorry, that's way off, sorry. It's 85% of that, sorry. So we have an 85% conversion goal at our school. So meaning if we had 100 trials come in, 85 should enroll. We don't ever have 100 trials come in, just throwing that out there as a number. So if our enrollment goal is 30 new members, we should be enrolling at 85%. So really like 37 trials should do it for us. Daily add-ons, this could also be upgrades for you guys. So how many upgrades did you sell today? Daily memberships, how many cancellations, and then monthly membership total, monthly add-ons, and then closing percentage. Okay, and then future opportunities, the last section. How many trials do we have set up over the next 2 weeks? This is important to track because I need to know if I'm on track with trials to hit our enrollment goals for the month. So if I have 0 trials scheduled over the next 2 weeks, we got to do something to generate some trials over the next two weeks so we can have those opportunities to hit our goals. And the number of lead generating events over the next 2 weeks, this could be booths, could be school talks, it could be anything that you're doing in the community to generate leads. Okay, but the goal is to have at least one of these scheduled in the next 2 weeks. All right, so that way we're not just reliant on online leads coming in to make this work. I'm going to go ahead and share this with all of you. This is part of our new martial arts systems program we're launching. When you guys get this, you're not going to be able to edit it. Okay, no, it's viewer mode. If you want to copy it, you'll just go file, make a copy. It'll copy it to your Google Drive, and then you'll be able to fully edit it however you want. Okay, this will also have our end of shift debriefs that we have for each one of our positions, so you can see exactly what questions every role is answering at the end of the day. Okay, so let me share this with you guys. We do have a spreadsheet, which is the next thing I'm going to show you guys. Let me just throw this in real quick. Boom. Okay, so everyone has that. Let me just switch screens on the back end here. Sorry, so I can see the right page, guys. let me share our spreadsheet that we use so you guys can see this. Now this, I can't give you the link for it because we have clients that like pay as part of our program to get this, but I want to go over it with you guys so you guys can sort of see what we track. So right now we just have some arbitrary data in this, but what we track monthly, so this is all of our monthly tracking. Now this isn't numbers for our school, this is just sort of our demo KPI sheet that we do. So we will track gross revenue, and then we also compare this year to last year. Okay, so for example, if gross this year was 30,000, last year was 24,000. Okay, this spreadsheet, the way we set it up, calculates the difference, positive or negative, year over year. And then it will also calculate your total for that point in the year, and if it's an increase or a decrease over the previous year. One of my biggest flaws is I forget to look at year over year, and I'm very impatient when it comes to growth. So I'll look at our numbers for this month and I'll be like, oh, we're doing terrible. But then I like pull up last year's number and we're up like $8,000 from the same month last year. And I'm like, all right, we're not doing terrible. I'm just very impatient. So I can take a step back and breathe a little bit. But comparing year over to year as an entrepreneur is super important because it's very easy for us to get stuck in this month. Okay. And we also tend to be more self-critical of ourselves than the average person being entrepreneurs. So this helps us to sort of put it in more perspective. We have our arm that gets calculated as well. Our spreadsheet also we set up to calculate the leg as we input more information. And then we also track monthly recurring revenue month by month. And then we do last year comparison as well with monthly recurring revenue. Because sometimes this, you might see a certain difference, but then maybe you look at this and billing's actually gone down and you're just doing better with over-the-counter sales. So it's important to track both recurring revenue, so your billing, and whatever your gross revenue is. As far as membership for month, we always track total and active members. We track inactive members, which are people on contract not attending. We want to start to see how we're doing with outreach to those. Of course, we track new members, lost members, and then our spreadsheet that we have will auto-calculate attrition as well. And then we also look at active last year versus this year just to sort of see where we're at comparison. For intros or trials, whatever you want to call them, we track show up rate, we track enrolled, and then we track conversion percentage. Okay, so again, we set up our spreadsheet. It doesn't turn green until you're at least 80%, which is like good, but not great in my opinion. 85% is sort of what we consider to be great. And then you'll see if it drops below 80%, the color of the cell changes. So that way it draws attention to it. For a program breakdown, we track this as well. So we don't actually have these programs at our school. This is, again, just our template. We have little champions, 8 to 12-year-old, and then we have our upgrade programs. But we track how many people are in each student at the end of each month, or in each program at the end of each month. The reason we do this is it helps us know where we need to tailor our marketing to. So for example, if we see like we're getting a lot of new students, but it's all in our little champions classes, then I look back at our ads and maybe all the pictures in those ads are kids ages 5 to 7. And that's why our little champions class is the one that's growing the most. So that tells me as the owner that I probably need to give our ad manager more images that have 8 to 12-year-olds in them, or maybe more images of adults if I'm trying to grow my adult program. Testing, we also track number of students that have tested as well as pass percentage. So our goal is a 95% pass percentage with quality. And then we have multiple instructors that grade to make sure it's not just based on the head coach wanting to pass everyone to be everyone's friend. Okay, they do have to earn it. And then the other tab that we track pretty frequently is going to be our marketing. Okay, so the cool thing about this is, let's say I put my marketing spend of 2,000 in, let's say I get 100 leads. Okay, it's going to calculate what my cost per lead is. Agency clients, so if you're on this in your Relentless Media Agency, you guys do have access to this. Okay, if you're not sure where to find it, just email us and we'll resend it to you. But you can get this exact spreadsheet to track. And then let's say out of those 100, we got 50 trials, and let's say we're doing a $14 trial. It's going to really just fill in everything for you. It's going to do show up rate, appointment booking rates. Okay, and then it calculates your percentage so you can sort of see where you are, enrollments, I'm just putting arbitrary numbers in there. And then the cool thing is it's going to tell you what your cost per acquisition is, right? $37 is a very, very rare cost per acquisition. It's usually closer to 100. If you have a $37 cost per acquisition, you should be spending $10,000 a month in marketing and fill your school this month. And then it'll also break down, when we fill in everything, it'll break down your arm, leg, lifetime value and all of that as well with the spreadsheet. But this is what we use for monthly and just being able to look at each quarter at a glance and sort of see where we are. Okay, let's jump in to questions. The spreadsheet template we can't share because that's part of a program that everyone, our mastermind clients pay to be a part of. We are releasing, I'm not trying to make this a pitch, but we are releasing a martial arts systems program that's gonna be coming out next month that will give you guys every single business system we use in our martial arts school. You guys will get access to it. So even the spreadsheet is included in that as well. Gotta jump. Thank you guys. Thanks, Rocky. How do you track leg? So leg, if your software doesn't track you for it, then what I would do is I would create a spreadsheet. Okay. And every time someone cancels, you're going to put their name, start date, end date. So the date they canceled. And then another column that is how many months was their total membership for? So like if they started in January, quit in August, I'm going to put 8 months in that last cell. And then you keep doing that for every cancellation. And then you can always just average that last column of months to figure out what your overall leg is. Gage, how do we keep up to date on info regarding martial arts systems program you're launching? If you are receiving emails or text messages from us, you will get updated through both those mediums. Also, if you are in any of our Facebook groups or following me on any social platform, you will see us plastering it everywhere. Rick, I've used MindBody for years. Would you? Yes, I would. I would suggest switching to Spark. We used MindBody when I worked at I Love Kickboxing, and for me, we have the highest priced version of it too, so you could do like full customization and stuff. Even that version was like still too rigid. There's still so much stuff you couldn't do compared to what Spark can do. So I would suggest switching to Spark, and I don't get paid to say that either. Just my recommendation. All right, guys. Did everyone get some good information out of today's webinar? Yes, awesome. I just want to thank you guys for giving me an hour of your day. I know you guys are all super busy. If you guys have any follow-up questions or anything like that, just feel free to shoot me a message on Facebook, and then just give me 24 hours to get back to you, okay? But if you have any follow-up questions or anything, let me know. I appreciate all of you guys. Hopefully, we'll see a lot of you guys at the Relentless Membership Summit. Tickets, VIP tickets are sold out. We still have some general admission tickets. And then we have a $29 live stream for the summit. It's super cheap. I just wanted to get it out to as many people as possible. RelentlessSummit.com is where you can go for all that info. All right. Thank you guys. Have a great day.
Thank you, Adam.